Hello everybody, this is Danny from Deep South Homestead on porch time today. Oh, having to come back in the studio room. It is very windy. I mean, we're probably talking 25-mile-an-hour winds blowing. It's a beautiful day. It's nice and cool in the 60s, but plus the neighbors have got the lawnmowers running and stuff, so it's probably best that I come in the studio here. It looks like a lot of our videos will be done here. People are complaining about the cabin, saying that it echoes too bad in there, so I'm going to come back to the studio room and sit down and try to do it here. But the subject for today on Porch Time is one that I've really been thinking about for a while, and it may take me a little while to get through this one. But it's called When the Storm Clouds Pass. As I've talked about in my videos over on Patreon and some of them on YouTube, about the situation that we're facing with all the weather anomalies and everything that's going on, there's a lot of storms, guys. I mean, the storms, when we were doing live Saturday night, we went early, and as soon as we got off, the weather got bad. When these storms keep coming through, it's like they just keep coming this year, and they just keep coming. And I looked through a lot of research, and people were saying that 2019 would be the year of the storms, would be a year of a lot of rain and a lot of problems. And it appears that that may be true up to this point, because there's massive flooding everywhere. I've been sent pictures of snow and trees leafed out with the snow on them and stuff, how everything had just done budded out, and it come this massive snowstorms and just destroying everything. The buds are all dying, falling on the ground, But guys, when the storm clouds pass, have you ever noticed what happens afterwards? In the midst of the storm, it seems like things are just really, really bad. And they usually are. I mean, this last system that we had come through was just horrendous. I mean, there was tornadoes everywhere, massive windstorms, blizzards, flooding, all kinds of things. Now, we were blessed here at Deep South Homestead. We got, I don't even think it was an inch of rain, right close to an inch of rain. And the wind broke one tree off on my property. Didn't tear the fence down. It landed right beside it. But in the midst of these storms, it seems like it's the worst that it can be. And it's any storm is that way. If you've ever been through hurricanes, I've been through many hurricanes, and you always say, gosh, this is such a bad storm. But technically, it's not much different than any of the other hurricanes. It's just that it's been a year since we've had one, usually, or several years since we had one, and we just forget. All of them are bad. And in the midst of the storm, it seems sometimes there's no hope. And that's what wears us down, is the fact that it seems like there's no hope, is that all will be lost. And there's massive destruction. There's flooding, like we talked about. There's lightning striking things. The wind's blowing, breaking trees off, tearing roofs up. Flipping vehicles on highways. Tornadoes are hitting, just devastating things. I don't know how to put this any better than it's some man-made. It is some just cycles that the earth goes through. It is some God. The Bible speaks of in the last days of an age, and I believe it's talking about the church age, that we're going to see these kind of things, and it says, don't let your hearts be troubled. And I know that's difficult. I know that's hard. because every time the storms come, we're just sitting here and we see the loss of life here, the loss of property there. There's just massive damage everywhere. Storms have ripped things apart. It's hard not to be troubled. But yet the scripture says in the latter days these things will happen. And that we shouldn't be troubled by them. Now, that's difficult, especially if you're the one who's had something happen. You know, it was hard for my heart not to be troubled after Katrina, because my place was almost like a garden of paradise here. The sun never hit the ground anywhere on my property except right where my house was, and it was only for like an hour and a half to 2 hours in the day because trees literally canopied everything. And it was just grass and dirt underneath it and leaves. Everything was just, it was like a park. And, you know, Katrina come through and just literally wiped everything out, just about. And when I had it pushed, because that was my only alternative. I mean, I sawed all the logs out of it that I could get out of it for lumber, and we cut as much firewood as we could cut. And they came in with a dozer. I brought a dozer in here with a friend of mine, and we just pushed all the stumps and the small trees and stuff that was in the way. And when I got here and looked at it after being gone to work, it looked like it was just open. I mean, there was nothing. A few trees standing scattered around, but everything else was gone. And it was hard for me to not be troubled at that moment because everything just looked so horrible. And yet, it didn't damage my house, it was just my property. Now we have those who, when the storms come, that it damages property, it damages homes, and it takes lives. Some people lose their lives sometimes. And it's hard not to be troubled when those things happen. Jessica from Roots and Refuge at the gathering did an excellent speech about storms. And I thought about that a lot after she's given it. And you know, in the midst of anything like that going on, it seems, like we said a while ago, there's no hope. But have you ever stopped to notice when the storm clouds pass, what happens? What usually happens when the storm clouds pass? Now, what does a storm do? A storm literally cleanses the atmosphere, and when a storm passes, now understand what I'm fixing to say. Weather is not like it used to be. When I was a child, up until I was a teenager, you could count in the summertime, you could count on when it come up a thunderstorm and around, it would usually come up around 2 o'clock or 3. It would be, if it come out of the east, it was going to be bad. But it wasn't going to last long. And if it come out of the southwest, it was going to be really bad. And it was going to be tornadic or whatever, because most of our tornadoes from those kind of storms, they come out of the southwest, moving towards the northeast here where we live. And they were going to be horrendous. And usually pretty devastating, but there's always something you can count on. Before the sun set in the evening, the storm clouds would pass, and you would see the sun set in the afternoon. And you'd have time usually to go out afterwards and assess the damage and walk around and look and possibly even fix a few things if something was damaged. Or go to the garden and check the gardens and stuff like that. You always had that in the evenings. It happened so many times. My dad would always say when we was having a bad storm, him and my mom were scared of bad weather, and they would always put us kids in one room in the house, and we'd sit there through the bad weather until it was over. And I can remember as a child, and I'm sure some of y'all can, I can remember the houses weren't grounded like they are now. Everything was a little more, I don't even know what the right word is. Maybe it wasn't as, the power system wasn't as structural as it is now and as advanced. And we would be sitting there in the living room and lightning would pop so close and so hard that the light bulb in the ceilings would just pop and bust and blow glass everywhere. And we'd see a big blue flame pop out, and everything would just, and the TV might get burned up if it wasn't unplugged or something like that. Those things happened regularly during the summer. But like I said a while ago, after my dad had us all set in there, as soon as the storm would pass, my grandpa would always say, listen to the thunder, son. When you hear the thunder rolling in the sky, and it sounds like it's echoing and echoing and echoing, he said, the storm has passed. It may still be raining and it may still be thundering and lightning, but the worst of the storm is over. And I can remember my dad, or my grandpa too, after we'd sat there for a while, and we'd listen to the thunder as it would just roll through the sky. You'd hear a boom, and then it would just like, it was echo, and then echo, and then echo, and then echo. And you might look if it was close to dark, and when it come in, and you saw the lightning strike, and it was just scattering all through the sky, literally. Not coming down in a bolt, but it would strike, and you'd see it running through the clouds at night. He would always say, well, the worst of the storm's over. And we could usually go out after that. Now, not while it was lightning, but after the storm was over. We would always go out in the evenings. My dad would say, let's go to the garden. Let's see how bad it was, if it blew the corn down, or if we needed to restake the tomatoes. And I can remember you'd have to go barefooted because you walk in the garden, you just bog up, to fix whatever the damage it was done. But there was always that hope that the storm would pass before dark, and you would be able to go back out. As kids played in mud puddles, and they would run and splash in the mud puddles and stuff like that, and then the adults would go assess the damage, and the air would be so clean and so crisp afterwards that it would be like everything was new. You could smell the newness in the air. You could smell the clean in the air. But the world we live in today is somewhat different. Due to geoengineering and other technologies, HARP, and there's one down in the southern hemisphere that actually works off of an island out in the Caribbean that's controlling the central Caribbean weather and hurricanes and steering and stuff like that. These things have fixed it to where when we have weather now, it's usually massive and it's destructful. And it doesn't necessarily pass. Matter of fact, I can't even remember the last time now that when a storm passed, I could see the sun in the afternoon. It just stays cloudy. When the storm goes by, it's just cloudy. There's that old saying, I don't know if I remember quite how it goes, but if you see a red sunset, then you're going to have a beautiful day the next day. There's a sailor saying about that. But if you see a red sunrise, then there's trouble on the horizon. That's what my dad used to always watch for that and tell me. And I remembered those things, and I watched them for years, and it used to be accurate, but now it doesn't seem to work anymore. The weather's been tampered with so much now, till the storm clouds are not the way God made them in the beginning. Man has altered things. Like today, the wind has blown like 30, 20 to 30 miles an hour most all day. And literally, the sun has not even come out. I mean, it's just cloudy. You know, there's no breaks in it. The sun's not peeking through. I mean, it's literally just cloudy. And yet, when I looked at the news on my computer this morning, the weather, it showed today being a sunny day. So we see that it might not be raining, but it's cloudy. There's no sun getting through to the ground. That alone messes with the agriculture. It messes with the Earth's ability to do things, because the Earth needs the sunshine. It needs a certain amount of sunshine to warm the soil. And the problem we're having here is because there's no sunshine hardly any. I mean, we may have it for a day, but then it clouds right back up, and the soil never really warms up. So our crops, when we plant our seeds, we have to replant because, well, our green beans, for instance, we're on our second planting of green beans. And this time, looks like we've got a fairly decent stand if it doesn't turn cold again. And we know that this is Tuesday morning. Monday morning was 43 here. This Tuesday morning is supposed to be 44, which is not uncommon, but it was 93 just 3 or 4 days ago. You know, there's that much of a drastic difference. That's like a 50-degree difference, you know, in the temperature. And plants, the cell structure of the plant can't handle that hardly and be productive. Now, my little peppers have blooms on them, and I don't look for the blooms to take because of the cold. And I looked into the future forecast for us, and they're showing that even next week, we've got some temperatures back down in the low 40s. So there's going to be storms. There's going to be storms, and there are going to be clouds. And in the midst of it, it's going to seem like it's really bad. But when they pass, that's when things become productive. Because we, contrary to what anyone says, we need the storms. Things like tomato plants, pepper plants, trees, different things like that, any kind of vegetables, that it needs the wind rocking it back and forth. Some, now not massive, but some, in order for the plant to become sturdy and strong enough to hold itself. That's why a lot of times in greenhouses you'll turn fans on and the plants will sit there, not only to pollinate, but it will help to sturdy up the stalks. And we see that, you know, it takes the rain with the lightning. When the lightning takes place, it splits the atmosphere, and when it comes back together, you get your thundering. Well, out of this, when the rain falls, that creates nitrogen, and the rain brings the nitrogen down to the soil, which the plants need, because there's nitrogen in the atmosphere then. And at that point, I believe they call it ionized. It's ionized and it's washed into the ground. And weather is necessary for productivity, but man-made weather is not necessary, because it will never be right. I don't care what they do. And then the fact that we have man-made weather with other chemicals being added into it to make it possible. We're bringing aluminum, we're bringing barium, strontium, ionized silver. I mean, there's so many things that I'm reading that's actually in these geoengineering now that is being washed into our soil. It's getting into us as humans, causing respiratory problems, Alzheimer's. There's lots of different things that's being brought on by these problems. But the thing that we have to understand is that when a storm passes, everything is new afterwards, like we said a while ago. We have to grasp the concept that we have to have the storms in order for everything to grow. But man-made storms do not do what natural storms are intended to do. They destroy rather than benefit. Now, let's turn this just a little bit. Let's talk about human life. Let's talk about how that this also affects, how can we make this into an application to our human life. As humans, we face obstacles, we face challenges in our life. I don't like to use the word problems, I like to use obstacles or challenges in our life. These are storms in our life. A storm in a person's life can be anything. It can be the loss of a job, it can be the loss of a spouse, the loss of a child, the loss of a job, the loss of a home, the loss of property, loss of income. It can be loss of health. It could be anything, literally anything. And as humans, we have storms in our life. And nobody's storm is any worse than anyone else's. And I say that respectively because how something affects me will affect you totally different. I may have a storm in my life and you may look at it and you may go, well, that wouldn't bother me at all. Well, I may be weak there and you may be strong there. And that makes us different. But it doesn't mean that the storm that one person faces is any more important or any less important than the other person's storm in their life. And I think that's where a lot of times we as humans, we tend to get judgmental toward other people. We go, well, I don't know why they're fussing about that because that's nothing. What about what I went through? And guys, that's the reason it used to be the old adage, don't talk about a person until you've walked a mile in their moccasins. That's where we have to be careful. Because we're all going to face storms in our life. We're all going to have trouble. As a matter of fact, if you read the Bible at all, and you go over to the book of Job, you will find in the very first part of that book, Job likens man's troubles to a fire. He talks about if you have a fire, I'm going to paraphrase this, if you have a fire burning outside and you walk up there basically and you take your foot and you kick it or you throw another log in on the fire, all those embers you see going up into the sky in the night, all those red embers you see flying up into the sky, Job makes an analogy there. He says man's troubles are like those embers in that fire. There's more than he can count. They're just everywhere. They're multiple. So we know that in life we're going to have troubles and we're going to have storms. Now, how the important thing is how you react to that storm. Just like a thunderstorm coming through and the damage that it does and the repairs you have to make, in life, there's storms that come through in our lives, and there's damage from those storms. And there's damage from those troubles and those obstacles and those challenges that we talk about. There's damage done. And how you respond to that damage will determine a lot about who you are and how you'll spend the rest of your life. If you have troubles come into your life or you create troubles, let's just say you're a kind of person who goes around creating trouble, making storms. Well, if you're a trouble causer, then storms will follow you everywhere you go. You may say, well, I'm living here and it's just really bad. And I've lived over there, it's really bad over there. And I lived over yonder, it was really bad over there. Well, you need to stop and realize that everywhere you've lived, it's really bad. What's the common denominator there? It's you. And if it's you, then stop and take a moment to look at yourself and ask yourself, am I the problem Am I the storm everywhere I go? These are things we have to ask ourselves. Perhaps something happens in your life and you literally don't understand it. You know, and there's a lot that's happened in my life a lot. There's been a lot of things that's happened in my life. I mean, I don't understand why God's done some of the things He's done in my life or allowed it. And I'm not saying God did it. I'm saying God allowed it. I don't get it. You know, I don't know why I had to lose a spouse in my 40s. I don't know why that had to happen. I'm sure God had a reason for it. I don't know why, you know, certain pieces of property, well, I do know now, but I didn't know then. I looked at a piece of property way away from here up in the central part of the state that I could have bought at one time at a real good price, and God just would not let me buy that piece of property, and I didn't understand it for years. But then one day, I got my answer, and I was like, wow, I am so thankful that I did not get to buy that piece of property. God knew what He was doing. And guys, we're going to have these storms in our life. They're going to come and they're going to go. Whatever it may be for you, maybe it's the loss of a job. Maybe you've lost your income and you don't have any income and you're sitting there not knowing what to do or how to do it. And how you handle that will determine a lot about your character and who you are. If you get angry and fighting mad and you're that kind of person, you're going to live a very stressful life. But if you're the kind of person that sits down and says, you know what, I lost my job, I guess I'm going to have to really tighten up and really see if I can't start putting a lot of fingers out there to see if I can't find something. Then if you do that, chances are you will move on. But if you sit back and you complain and say, you know, why this or why that? Why did this have to happen? Why did that have to happen? You're probably going to live a very stressful life, and your health is probably going to break down, and you're never really going to go anywhere in life with that mentality. But I said all that to say this. Even though all those storms come in our lives, when the storm clouds pass, just like with the weather, everything seemed crisp, it seemed new. And you could smell the freshness in the air. It's the same way in our human life when we face those challenges that we call storms. And it seems really, really bad. And we don't know what we're going to do. And then all of a sudden, everything is dark, it's gloomy, it seems like everything's hateful, everything's mean, everything is sad, you know, and we're like depressed, and we don't know what's going on. God's not hearing us. We're not getting answers. But then all of a sudden that day comes when the storm clouds pass, and we can see clear, and we can say, wow, now I know why it happened. And boy, am I glad of the way it turned out. You know, it's easy to get angry when something doesn't go your way, especially when there's an obstacle or there's trouble and you're facing a massive challenge in your life. And it seems like the storm will never let up. But I'm here to tell you that God is faithful. And hey, some storms you can't control. And you have to accept that. And you have to say, Father, I can't control this storm. I need your help. There's one thing that I pray every morning. And that is, Father, I don't know what this day is going to bring. It's a new day. I don't want to add anything to the slate because it's right now. It's the first thing in the morning. Right now, when I woke up, this slate is clean. There's nothing on it today. I don't want to add anything today. then give me power over it. Give me power over the enemy. Give me power among men. And you know, he's always done it. A lot of people, as I've told y'all in some of my other videos, look at me and go, especially my family, has said, man, he's got one of the coldest hearts I've ever seen. But then, when I help somebody, they go, wow, you really went out of your way for me. And guys, that's what it's all about. Is when the storm clouds pass, is repairing the damage. If there's damage been caused, especially if it's physical damage on property, homes, helping people out. We talked about that in the live stream the other night. Two Family, another one of the YouTube channels of String Ridge, I think it was. I think it was. I can't remember. But one of the other YouTube channels anyway that watches us went and helped out Andy. And guys, that he had a storm in his life. And people come to his rescue. Amanda had surgery. She had a storm in her life. And there's been people come to her rescue. Story's having a storm in her life. People coming to her rescue. Because the storm clouds are passing. And when the storm clouds pass and the atmosphere is clean and everything is new, then there's that ability to help. And it's the same way in our personal lives. If we have storms come up in our personal lives, be patient. Sit back and wait. You know, there's some of them you can't control. And don't get bogged down in them. You can't control what another person does. But you can forgive and you can move on. And that's what Porch Time is about today. It's about using weather to analyze our physical life and the similarities that both of them show together and how we can use and compare them to live a better, more peaceful, healthy, Christ-like life. And guys, that's my only desire, is to do that and to be as close to the Lord as I can possibly be and be a blessing to someone else. I can't save the world. I'm smart enough to know that. I can't change anybody's thoughts. I'm smart enough to know that. If somebody don't like me, I can't change that. And I'm okay with that. Because I'm not the one that's got to deal with it. You know? And if someone doesn't like you, or someone is causing you problems, then, you know, if it can't be resolved, then move on. Because God will deal with it. And I guess that's what Porch Time is about today, is just literally loving one another, moving forward, and being able to, once the storm clouds pass, being able to get back on our feet and to enjoy the life that we've been given here. Guys, I really appreciate y'all so much for sitting down and listening to Porch Time. It means a lot to me to be able to share my thoughts with you. You all send me so many emails and so many comments, and I really appreciate that. A lot of them are positive, and a lot of you tell me how much of a blessing it is for you and how it's helped you. And that is a blessing to me in my life to hear that. And of course, I always get the hate, and I'm okay with that because those people need help, and I understand that, and that's okay. I'm not going to have any controversy or anything like that. I just try to move forward and keep doing what I do and asking the Lord to bless me in it. And do the same thing, and God will bless you. So thank you, guys, from Deep South Homestead.